John Garang De Mabior is a paragon of many fasts. He was the first premier of the state of South Sudan before independence. He was also the first vice president of the Republic of Sudan, the first southerner to hold that position. He was an educator, a rebel, and a statesman. Today, we delve into the life of John Garang De Mabior. Born to the Dinka ethnic group in Wangulei village in the Upper Volta region of South Sudan, John Garang would be orphaned at the age of 10, losing both parents to pestilence. This left him at the mercy of a benefactor who was also his uncle, who saw to it that he furthered his education first in the Wau region of South Sudan and later in Rumbek. In 1962, John Garang abandoned his studies and thrust himself into the front lines of the First Sudan Civil War. Noting his gift and talents in education, his senior commanders discouraged him from continuing the war effort and instead to complete his studies. John Garang traveled to Tanzania, where he completed his secondary school studies, earning a scholarship to Grinnell College in Ohio, where he undertook a bachelor's degree in economics. When the Civil War ended in 1972, he was absorbed into the Sudanese military, where he quickly rose through the ranks from captain, later becoming colonel. Despite the end of the First Sudanese Civil War, discontent in the south still persisted. Things came to a head when Omar al-Bashir had attempted to make Sharia law the predominant law of the land, both in the Muslim north and the Christian and traditional African south of Sudan. In addition, the widespread poverty experienced by the Southerners contributed to this discontent. Despite inhabiting the oil-rich south, the northern government of Khartoum had carted away all the oil wealth and used it to develop northern Sudan, leaving the pastoralist south poor and devoid of any development. The Second Sudanese Civil War was to begin in earnest in 1983 after the formation of the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement, known as the SPLM. It would be founded by Major Anyen Ball, the commander of Battalion 105, and his colleague William Nguyen Bang Machar, the commander of Battalion 107. The two came together and instituted a revolt against the central government of Khartoum. In only a few months, SPLM had attracted over 3,000 soldiers who had defected from the Sudanese military, setting the tone to what would be decades of civil war and strife. Among the soldiers and commanders who showed support for the civil war was John Garang De Mabior. Decades of warring took its toll on the SPLM when, in 1991, cracks emerged in its leadership. Senior commander Riek Machar, an ethnic Nuer, along with Lanakol, an ethnic Shilluk, broke away from the SPLA, forming their own splinter group, SPLA Nasser. In the following year, another senior commander, Bany, would join them. He was John Garang's chief of staff and deputy commander. The vacuum he left resulted in the elevation and promotion of Salva Kiir Mayardit, who would later become the first president of the Republic of South Sudan.
And that I shall protect and promote the unity of the people of South Sudan. And promote the unity of the people of South Sudan. And consolidate the democratic decentralized system of government. And consolidate the democratic decentralized system of government. So help me God. So help me God.
The infighting was as a result of brewing ethnic tensions. You see, South Sudan is composed of multiple ethnic communities, including the Dinka, the Shilluk, and the Nuer. Ethnic infighting had grown over who would take command of the extensive oil resources of South Sudan. The civil war would continue even into the early and mid-2000s, with factions changing loyalties. At some point, the SPLM would ally with the Sudanese government in Khartoum, and at other times, it would be the SPLM Nasser that would ally itself with the Khartoum against the SPLM. This was until the Kenyan government, led by the newly elected president Emilio Mwai Kibaki, initiated and spearheaded negotiations between Khartoum and the rebels. The Kenyan government held several talks and negotiations with Omar al-Bashir, John Garang, as well as Riek Machar and other rebel leaders. This culminated in the Naivasha Accords, wherein John Garang would be the first premier of a semi-autonomous South Sudan and the first vice president of the Greater Sudan. He would be the first southerner to hold this position, the second most powerful position in the country at the time. In addition, South Sudan would operate semi-autonomously with its own army, government, and legislature for 6 years, after which a referendum would be held, during which its citizens would vote to remain a part of Sudan or form its own breakaway state. John Garang would never see his independent Sudan. In 2005, his helicopter would crash when leaving Uganda in the presidential chopper of his friend and longtime ally, Uganda's strongman Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Both the SPLM command and the Sudanese government at first denied reports of his death, choosing to keep things under wraps until the SPLM had come up with a new command structure that would seal the void. Ultimately, a few days later, the SPLM command did confirm that John Garang and 7 Ugandans, believed to be the staff of the chopper, had perished in South Sudan near the Ugandan border. Although the reported cause was poor visibility, causing the chopper to crash into a nearby mountain range, skeptics, including the Ugandan president, alluded to the possibility of external interference.
Now, although it was a little bit late, this plane was very well equipped, because I've been flying in it at night myself. It had all the systems. Could see the weather, could see the mountains. It could also see the landing, because it had powerful satellites. So for me, I want to wait for the inquiry. I'm not ruling out anything.
John Garang's remains were transported to New Kush in the southern region of Sudan, a city that he had founded, where a memorial was held in his honor. He would be buried in Juba, that would later become the capital of the Republic of South Sudan, never being able to see his home, South Sudan, get independence. John Garang's legacy remains deeply etched in the history and future of South Sudan. Known as the father of South Sudan, despite him not having been present to witness it, his former aide Salva Kiir is the first and current president of South Sudan. Critics insist that his motivations were not always noble. They accuse him of being a war profiteer, fomenting rebellion in the south to reap from its oil wealth, while his family lived cush lives in the Kenyan capital and graced foreign universities. His legacy is an independent South Sudan, a new nation, a young nation, though rife with its own challenges as a young state and an African state. The jury is out as to whether he is a contributing factor to its current ethnic divides. Be that as it may, John Garang De Mabior will be remembered as a scholar, a soldier, and the founding father of the Republic of South